The War Council had made their decision 3 cycles ago. Earth, the small blue planet in the outer spiral arm of the galaxy, would be their next conquest. Admiral studied the holographic display showing the primitive world spinning lazily in space. Intelligence reports indicated the humans had barely achieved faster-than-light communication, let alone travel. Their weapons were crude projectile systems and chemical explosives. It should be a simple harvesting operation. "Begin the invasion," commanded, his forearms manipulating the control interface with practiced ease. The massive fleet, over 2,000 ships strong, emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. Each vessel bristled with plasma cannons and quantum disruptors capable of cracking planets. The humans wouldn't even see them coming. On Earth, Dr. Sarah was reviewing deep space monitoring data at the Arecibo Observatory when her screens lit up with impossible readings. Thousands of objects had appeared near Neptune's orbit, all displaying energy signatures unlike anything in their databases. She reached for the emergency communication line to NASA headquarters, her hands trembling as the implications hit her. "Sir, we have a situation. Multiple unidentified objects have appeared in our outer solar system. The energy readings are off the charts. I think we're looking at first contact, and it doesn't look friendly." Within hours, every major government on Earth was in crisis mode. The objects were moving inward at incredible speeds, ignoring all attempts at communication. Military satellites detected weapon signatures that human understanding. President Martinez stood in the Pentagon's Situation Room, surrounded by generals and scientists, all wearing the same expression of barely controlled panic. "How long do we have?" Martinez asked. "At their current velocity, approximately 72 hours until they reach Earth orbit," replied General, his voice tight with stress. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship, Admiral received the first puzzling reports from his scouts. The human governments had mobilized their militaries with surprising speed and coordination. More concerning were the energy readings his sensors were detecting from the planet's surface. Massive installations were powering up, structures his intelligence reports had classified as primitive energy generation facilities. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "the humans appear to be activating something. We're detecting power spikes across multiple continents." Dismissed the concern with a wave of his primary hand. "Desperate attempts at defense. Continue the approach. Ready the subjugation bombardment." What they didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. The massive power plants they'd identified were actually weapon systems, disguised and hidden across Earth's surface. Project Aegis had been humanity's greatest secret, born from the paranoid minds of military planners who insisted that if faster-than-light travel was possible, someone would eventually use it against Earth. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, Doctor initiated the final startup sequence for the planetary defense grid. Fusion reactors that had masqueraded as civilian power plants for 30 years suddenly revealed their true purpose. Particle accelerators stretching for hundreds of kilometers underground hummed to life. Orbital platforms that appeared to be communication satellites deployed weapon arrays that had been folded in extra-dimensional space. "Aegis protocol activated," announced to the global command network. "All stations report ready. We have full planetary coverage." The fleet reached the outer edge of Earth's defensive perimeter. Admiral watched with amusement as primitive chemical rockets launched from the planet's surface. The humans were actually trying to fight back with combustion-based propulsion. How quaint. "Destroy their pathetic vessels," he ordered. "Then begin surface bombardment of their major population centers." The first plasma volley lanced out toward the approaching human ships. But instead of vaporizing the primitive craft, the plasma beams struck something else entirely. Shimmering barriers of pure energy materialized around the human vessels, deflecting the alien fire harmlessly into space. The chemical rockets suddenly shed their outer hulls, revealing sleek vessels powered by antimatter drives and armed with weapons that made the Admiral's blood run cold. "Impossible," breathed as his sensors analyzed the human ships. "These are fourth-generation fusion drives. How did they achieve such technology?" His answer came in the form of humanity's counterattack. Particle beams erupted from the disguised human vessels, striking ships with surgical precision. The alien hulls, designed to withstand conventional plasma weapons, offered no protection against the focused streams of accelerated particles that carved through their armor like paper. The hidden orbital platforms revealed themselves next, uncloaking to display massive arrays. Projectiles the size of telephone poles, accelerated to significant fractions of light speed, began hammering the formation. Each impact sent shockwaves through the alien fleet as ships that had conquered dozens of worlds found themselves by a species they dismissed as primitive. "Admiral, we're taking heavy casualties," his tactical officer reported, panic creeping into his voice. "The humans somehow possess weapons technology equivalent to our own. Our shields are failing under their bombardment." Stared at the tactical display in growing horror. Half his advance fleet was already destroyed or disabled. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were winning. How had his intelligence been so catastrophically wrong? On Earth's surface, the true scope of humanity's deception became apparent. What they had identified as primitive industrial centers were actually massive weapons foundries. Factories that supposedly produced consumer goods had been manufacturing military hardware for decades. The humans had used their reputation as a peaceful, technologically inferior species as the perfect camouflage for the largest military buildup in galactic history. President Martinez watched the battle unfold from the Pentagon's war room, a grim smile on her face. "It appears our investment in paranoid preparation has paid off. How are our forces performing?" "Beyond expectations, Madam President," General replied. "The Aegis defense grid is operating at full efficiency. Enemy casualties are approaching 60%. Our own losses are minimal." The tide of battle was clearly turning, but humanity's greatest surprise was yet to be revealed. Deep space monitoring stations detected new contacts jumping into the system. For a moment, tension spiked as military commanders feared reinforcements. Instead, the new arrivals broadcast familiar identification codes. The human colonial fleet was returning home. What the galaxy didn't know was that humanity had been secretly expanding beyond Earth for over a century. While maintaining the facade of a single-planet species, human colonies had been established across dozens of star systems. The colonial fleet represented the combined military might of 37 human worlds, returning to defend that had given them life. Admiral Sarah commanded the human fleet from the bridge of the dreadnought Indomitable. Her ships had been traveling for months to reach Earth, responding to the emergency beacon that signaled imminent invasion. As her fleet emerged from hyperspace behind the formation, she opened a communication channel to the alien commander. "Unknown vessels, this is Admiral of the Human Colonial Defense Force. You have invaded sovereign human territory and attacked our. Surrender immediately or face the consequences." Nearly fell from his command throne as he processed the implications. The humans had faster-than-light travel. They had colonies. This wasn't a primitive species. It was a spacefaring civilization that had successfully hidden its true capabilities from the entire galaxy. "How" was all he could manage to say. The human admiral's voice came through with cold professionalism. "We learned a long time ago that the safest way to avoid unwanted attention was to appear harmless. Consider this lesson 1 in why appearances can be deceiving. You have 30 seconds to begin powering down your weapons and prepare for surrender." The fleet found itself caught between two human forces, both equipped with technology that matched or exceeded their own. The trap had been perfectly executed. Earth's apparent vulnerability had been bait, drawing the fleet into a carefully prepared killing ground where humanity could demonstrate exactly why invading their world had been a terrible mistake. Admiral faced the most humiliating decision of his military career. His once mighty invasion fleet was reduced to scattered survivors, trapped between two human formations that had emerged from what should have been empty space. The tactical situation was hopeless. His ships were outmaneuvered and rapidly running out of options. "Sir, what are your orders?" his tactical officer asked, his voice betraying the fear that gripped the entire command crew. Before could respond, new contacts appeared on their sensors. More human ships were arriving from different vectors, emerging from hyperspace with the precision of a carefully choreographed dance. These weren't just reinforcements. They were evidence of a military organization that spanned multiple star systems and possessed logistics capabilities that had never imagined possible for such a supposedly primitive species. Captain Maria Santos piloted her stealth reconnaissance vessel closer to the alien flagship, her ship's advanced camouflage systems keeping her invisible to sensors. For the past 6 months, her team had been infiltrating alien communication networks, learning their languages, and gathering intelligence on their military capabilities. What they'd discovered had led directly to this moment. "Command, this is Ghost One," she transmitted on a secured channel. "I'm picking up massive data transmissions from the enemy flagship. They're sending distress calls to something called the Galactic Council. Looks like our new friends want to tattle on us to their superiors." Admiral received the intelligence with interest rather than concern. Humanity's secret expansion hadn't been random or chaotic. They'd been systematically studying galactic politics, economics, and military structures for decades. The Galactic Council was exactly what they'd been preparing to eventually confront. "Let them call for help," replied. "It's time the galaxy learned what humanity is really capable of." Meanwhile, on the flagship, Admiral was frantically composing a priority transmission to the Galactic Council. His military pride warred with the necessity of admitting defeat, but survival took precedence over dignity. "Council emergency protocol activated. This is Admiral of the 4th Battle Fleet. The human subjugation mission has encountered unexpected complications. The target species possesses advanced military technology and unknown colonial territories. Request immediate strategic reassessment and possible reinforcement. Repeat, humans are not a primitive species. They represent a significant galactic threat." The transmission took several hours to reach the Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime, the political heart of the galaxy. When it arrived, it created chaos among the assembled representatives of 43 species. Humans were supposed to be a Class 7 civilization, barely capable of interplanetary flight. The report described military capabilities that ranked them as Class 3 or higher. Counselor of the Meridian Collective called for an emergency session. The tall, crystalline being had been one of the primary advocates for allowing the expansion into human territory. If the intelligence was accurate, they'd made a catastrophic miscalculation. "How is this possible?" demanded Counselor of the Hegemony Union. "Our surveillance data shows humans have achieved faster-than-light communication, but no evidence of FTL travel capability. Their military consisted of chemical explosives and kinetic projectiles." The answer came from an unexpected source. Counselor, representing the ancient Keeper species that had founded the Galactic Council, activated a holographic display showing data that made the assembled delegates fall silent. The Keepers had been watching humanity far longer than anyone realized. "The humans have been deliberately concealing their capabilities," announced, her ancient voice carrying the weight of. "Our long-range observational posts have detected evidence of human colonial activity in 37 star systems. They've been using advanced stealth technology to hide their expansion and true military strength." Back in the Sol system, the immediate crisis was reaching its conclusion. Admiral, faced with the complete destruction of his fleet, finally transmitted his surrender. The human response was swift and professional, revealing another aspect of their hidden sophistication. "Vessels, this is Admiral. You will power down all weapons systems and prepare to be boarded. Your crews will be treated according to the Galactic Conventions for Prisoners of War, assuming you've heard of them. Any attempt at resistance will result in the immediate destruction of your ships." The efficiency with which human boarding parties secured the alien vessels impressed even the defeated. These weren't primitive warriors stumbling through their first space battle. The humans moved with the precision of a military force that had been conducting similar operations for generations. Dr. Ellen led the xenobiology team aboard the captured flagship. Her real mission wasn't medical treatment for alien prisoners. It was gathering intelligence on technology and biology. Every scan, every conversation, every observation was being recorded and transmitted back to human research facilities hidden throughout the galaxy. "Fascinating," she murmured as she examined computer systems. "Their technology is actually inferior to ours in several key areas. They've achieved galactic expansion through sheer numbers and aggression, not technological superiority." This intelligence would prove crucial in the coming days as humanity prepared for the larger confrontation they knew was inevitable. The Galactic Council would respond to the defeat, and when they did, humanity intended to be ready. On Earth, President Martinez convened an emergency session of the Global Defense Council, the secret organization that had been coordinating humanity's hidden expansion for over a century. Representatives from 37 human colonies participated via quantum communication links, their very existence still unknown to the rest of the galaxy. Ladies and, Martinez began, the masquerade is over. Within hours, every major power in the galaxy will know that humanity is not the primitive species we've pretended to be. We need to decide how we're going to handle first official contact with galactic civilization. Admiral Wei, commander of the Defense Force, was the first to respond. Madam President, our colonies have been monitoring galactic communication networks for decades. We know how they treat newly discovered species. They either integrate them as junior members with limited rights or classify them as threats to be contained or eliminated. Given our demonstration of military capability, I doubt they'll offer us the junior membership option. The discussion that followed would reshape humanity's relationship with the galaxy forever. They could continue hiding, but the attack had made that impossible. They could seek peaceful integration, but galactic history suggested that would result in human worlds being occupied and controlled by Council forces. Or they could do what humanity had always done when faced with impossible odds, forge their own path. "We make our own rules," declared General from the Defense Command. "We've spent a century building this civilization in secret. We have the military strength to defend ourselves and the technological capability to compete with anyone in the galaxy. Why should we submit to a council that authorized the unprovoked invasion of our?" As if summoned by her words, new contacts appeared on long-range sensors. A massive fleet was approaching the Sol system, flying the banners of multiple Galactic Council species. The preliminary response force was arriving, and humanity was about to face its first true test as a galactic power. Admiral studied the approaching fleet through her ship's sensors. 12 different species were represented, with over 500 ships approaching in a formation designed to intimidate rather than fight efficiently. They clearly expected humanity to surrender rather than face the combined might of multiple galactic civilizations. "All human forces, this is Admiral," she broadcast on all command channels. "Unknown vessels are approaching our home system in apparent hostile formation. All colonial fleets are ordered to converge on Sol immediately. Operation Revelation is now active. It's time to show the galaxy exactly what humanity has been building out here." The message went out across 37 star systems, carried by quantum communicators that the rest of the galaxy didn't even know existed. Within hours, human fleets began emerging from hyperspace throughout the Sol system. Ships bearing the flags of New Terra, Avalon, Station, and dozens of other human worlds appeared in perfect formation, their presence announcing to the galaxy that humanity was no longer hiding. The Galactic Council fleet arrived to find not a defeated primitive world, but a fully mobilized interstellar civilization ready to defend itself. The humans had turned the tables completely, transforming from apparent victims into a major galactic power in a matter of hours. Fleet Admiral of the Galactic Council Enforcement Division had commanded interstellar fleets for 3 decades. He'd overseen the integration of 7 primitive species into galactic civilization, and had never encountered organized resistance from a newly discovered world. As his massive fleet approached the Sol system, he expected to find a defeated human population ready to accept Council authority. Instead, his sensors detected what appeared to be an organized defense fleet larger than many Council member species possessed. The humans had somehow assembled over 800 warships in their home system, displaying technology signatures that his tactical computers struggled to classify. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the human fleet is maintaining defensive formations around their primary world. They're not retreating or attempting to flee. They appear to be preparing for battle." Studied the display with growing unease. Intelligence reports had classified humans as a Class 7 civilization with limited military capability. The fleet facing him suggested at least Class 4 technology, possibly higher. Someone had made a serious miscalculation. "Open a communication channel," he ordered. "Standard first contact protocols." The response came immediately, indicating that humans possessed real-time translation technology that most Council species had taken centuries to develop. A female human appeared on his main screen, wearing what appeared to be a military uniform of sophisticated design. "This is Admiral Sarah, representing the Human Colonial Defense Force. You are in violation of human territorial sovereignty. State your intentions or withdraw immediately." Nearly laughed at the audacity. A species that hadn't officially made contact was demanding explanations from a Council enforcement fleet. "I am Fleet Admiral of the Galactic Council. By Council Resolution 2847, all newly discovered species must submit to Council authority for integration and assessment. You will stand down your military forces and prepare for peaceful occupation. His response was delivered with cold professionalism. Admiral, humanity rejects Council authority over our worlds and territories. We are a sovereign interstellar civilization with the right to self-determination. You have 30 minutes to withdraw from human space before we consider your presence an act of war. The audacity was breathtaking. A supposedly primitive species was threatening a fleet representing the combined military might of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. His initial amusement turned to anger as he realized the humans were serious. "You seem to misunderstand your situation," replied. "You face the combined fleets of 12 Council species. Surrender now and your integration will be peaceful. Resist, and we will demonstrate why the Council rules this galaxy." "Actually, Admiral," said with what might have been a smile, "I think you're the one who misunderstands the situation." At her signal, the space around the Council fleet suddenly filled with new contacts. Human ships emerged from hyperspace in perfectly coordinated jumps, appearing in formations that surrounded the Council fleet completely. Advanced stealth technology had concealed their approach until the moment they chose to reveal themselves. Watched in horror as his tactical displays updated. The humans hadn't assembled 800 ships in their home system. They'd assembled over 3,000 ships from across dozens of star systems, creating the largest battle fleet in recorded galactic history. The Council fleet was outnumbered 6-1 by vessels whose technology levels were clearly equal to their own. "Impossible," breathed. "Where did they come from?" His question was answered by a new voice on the communication channel. An elderly human male appeared on screen, wearing civilian clothing but radiating an authority that made instinctively straighten. "Admiral, I am Director of Human Colonial Affairs. Perhaps we should discuss the actual situation here. You represent a galactic council that authorized an unprovoked attack on our. We represent a human civilization that has been quietly expanding across this galaxy for over a century." Activated a holographic display that made his blood run cold. It showed a three-dimensional map of local galactic space, with human colonies marked in systems the Council had assumed were empty or claimed by other species. 37 human worlds were highlighted, each one representing a military and industrial base that had been developing in secret. "While your Council was debating whether humans were intelligent enough for contact," continued, "we were building starships, establishing colonies, and developing technologies that you clearly didn't expect us to possess. We've been watching your civilization for decades, learning your languages, studying your politics, and preparing for this exact moment." The revelation sent shockwaves through the Council fleet. Species representatives began demanding explanations from their military commanders. How had an entire human civilization developed without their knowledge? How had Council intelligence networks failed so completely? The answer lay in humanity's greatest strength, their ability to plan for the long term and work together toward common goals. While most species had achieved faster-than-light travel and immediately announced their presence to the galaxy, humans had taken a different approach. They'd studied galactic civilization from a distance, identified its weaknesses, and built their expansion around avoiding detection until they were strong enough to demand recognition as equals. Admiral found himself in a situation no Council military officer had faced before. His fleet was, and surrounded by a species that possessed detailed intelligence on Council military capabilities, while keeping their own strength completely hidden. Standard first contact protocols had no provision for dealing with such a scenario. "What do you want?" he finally asked, abandoning diplomatic pretense. Director's expression remained professionally neutral. "We want what any sovereign civilization wants, Admiral. Recognition of our territorial claims, respect for our political independence, and the right to participate in galactic affairs as equals rather than subjects. The Council will never accept such demands from a newly discovered species," replied automatically. "Then the Council needs to adjust its understanding of what constitutes a newly discovered species," Admiral interjected. "We've been a spacefaring civilization longer than some of your current member species. The fact that you only recently noticed us says more about your intelligence capabilities than our technological development." The truth was becoming clear to everyone involved. Humanity hadn't hidden their expansion because they were weak. They'd hidden it because they were smart. They'd used the galaxy's assumptions about primitive species to build an interstellar empire while their potential enemies remained complacent. Captain commanded a human stealth ship positioned near the Council flagship. Her mission was intelligence gathering, but she couldn't help admiring the tactical situation humanity had created. The Council fleet was trapped not by superior firepower alone, but by superior planning and preparation. "They're completely off balance," she reported to Admiral. "Council communications are chaotic. They're receiving conflicting orders from their home governments. Some species want to fight, others want to negotiate, and a few are already discussing withdrawal." The division within the Council fleet reflected a larger problem that humanity had identified through decades of observation. The Galactic Council was a loose confederation of competing interests rather than a unified government. When faced with an unexpected challenge, their natural response was argument and political maneuvering rather than decisive action. Admiral decided to exploit this weakness. "Admiral, you mentioned Council Resolution 2847. Are you familiar with Council Resolution 3156, which guarantees the territorial integrity of established interstellar civilizations?" Tactical displays showed legal documents appearing faster than his staff could analyze them. The humans had clearly studied galactic law extensively and were prepared to use it as a weapon. Resolution 3156 did indeed protect established civilizations, but it had never been applied to a species that had hidden their development. "You're suggesting that human civilization predates your official discovery," said slowly, beginning to understand the legal trap being constructed around his fleet. "We're not suggesting anything, Admiral," replied. "We're stating facts. Human interstellar expansion began in 2157 by your calendar. We established our first permanent colony in 2162. By any reasonable definition, we were an established interstellar civilization decades before they decided to invade our." The implications were staggering. If humans could prove their claims of long-term colonial expansion, they would have legal standing under galactic law as an established civilization. The invasion would be classified as an unprovoked attack on a sovereign power, making the Council complicit in an act of war. Fleet Admiral realized he was facing a species that had outmaneuvered the Council politically as well as militarily. The humans had turned what should have been a simple integration operation into a potential diplomatic catastrophe that could undermine Council authority throughout the galaxy. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked, knowing that his mission had already failed regardless of how the immediate confrontation resolved. The negotiation that followed would be studied in diplomatic academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. Director had transformed a military confrontation into a legal and political challenge that struck at the heart of Council authority. Admiral found himself negotiating not just a ceasefire, but potentially a complete restructuring of galactic power dynamics. "Our proposal is simple," began, displaying a document that had clearly been prepared well in advance. "Humanity requests immediate recognition as a sovereign interstellar civilization with all rights and privileges accorded to established Council member species. We seek diplomatic relations based on mutual respect and equal standing." "And if the Council refuses?" asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Admiral gestured toward the massive human fleet surrounding them. "Then we'll continue existing as we have for the past century, Admiral. The difference is that now you know we're here. We've proven we can defend ourselves and our territory. The question becomes whether the Council wants to engage with us as partners or spend the next several decades trying to fight an interstellar civilization that has been preparing for this conflict since before some of your member species achieved space flight." The tactical reality was undeniable. The human fleet represented a military force capable of defending their claimed territory indefinitely. Their technology levels were competitive with Council species, and their demonstrated ability to coordinate across multiple star systems suggested a level of organization that many Council members lacked. More importantly, the humans had revealed capabilities that fundamentally challenged Council assumptions about galactic civilization. They'd achieved faster-than-light travel, established colonial networks, and developed advanced military technology while remaining completely undetected by Council intelligence services. If they could do it, how many other civilizations might be operating in the galaxy's unexplored regions? Captain intercepted a priority transmission from Council headquarters on Nexus Prime. The emergency session had been in continuous debate for hours, with member species arguing over how to respond to the human revelation. The political implications were enormous, potentially affecting the Council's relationship with every member civilization. "Admiral," she reported, "Council communications indicate major political upheaval on Nexus Prime. Several species are questioning why they were authorized to invade human territory without proper intelligence assessment. Others are demanding explanations for how such a massive intelligence failure occurred." The political damage was spreading beyond the immediate crisis. Species that had joined the Council under threat of integration were beginning to question whether they might have had alternatives. The human example suggested that resistance to Council expansion was possible if properly organized and executed. Counselor was facing the worst political crisis of her career. The Meridian Collective had been one of the primary advocates for expansion, believing that rapid integration of primitive species would strengthen Council unity. Instead, they'd exposed the Council to humiliation and potential military defeat at the hands of a civilization they'd underestimated completely. "How did our intelligence networks miss an entire human interstellar empire?" she demanded of the Council's security chief. The answer was both simple and devastating. "The humans used our own assumptions against us, Counselor. We classified them as primitive based on limited observations of theirs. Once a species receives that classification, we stop looking for evidence that contradicts it. The humans exploited that blind spot perfectly." Meanwhile, aboard the human flagship, Director was coordinating with colonial governments across human space. The revelation of humanity's true capabilities was creating opportunities and challenges that required careful management. New Shanghai reports 15 new species attempting to establish diplomatic contact, his aide informed him. "Apparently, news of our confrontation with the Council fleet is spreading across galactic communication networks faster than the Council can control it." The ripple effects were exactly what humanity had anticipated. Other species, particularly those on the periphery of Council territory, were beginning to see humans as potential allies against Council expansion. The balance of galactic power was shifting in real time. Admiral received new orders from Nexus Prime, but they reflected the confusion and disagreement among Council leadership. Some species wanted him to attack immediately and restore Council prestige through military victory. Others demanded immediate withdrawal to avoid further diplomatic damage. A few were already suggesting that negotiation with humans might offer advantages over continued confrontation. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving diplomatic requests from 17 different species. They want to establish independent contact with human representatives." The Council's monopoly on first contact was crumbling. Species that had previously required Council approval for all diplomatic initiatives were beginning to act independently, inspired by humanity's successful challenge to Council authority. Dr. Lisa Park, humanity's lead, was analyzing data from the captured fleet when she made a discovery that would change everything. Buried in the computer systems were records of Council expansion over the past millennium, including detailed accounts of species that had been integrated against their will. "Director," she called excitedly, "you need to see this. They kept comprehensive records of their conquest operations. We have documented evidence of dozens of forced integrations, including several species that were classified as voluntary Council members. Realized immediately that they'd discovered a weapon more powerful than any military technology. Proof of systematic Council aggression against innocent civilizations would undermine the organization's legitimacy throughout the galaxy. Properly presented, this evidence could trigger widespread rebellion against Council authority. Prepare a comprehensive analysis," ordered. "Document everything and prepare for galactic broadcast. If the Council wants to play politics, they're about to learn that humans have been studying their game for a very long time." The information warfare that followed demonstrated another aspect of human capability that had gone unnoticed by Council intelligence. Humanity's communication networks were more sophisticated and far-reaching than anyone had imagined. Within hours, detailed evidence of Council forced integrations was being broadcast across dozens of star systems. reaching species that had never questioned the official version of their incorporation into galactic civilization. The Republic was the first to act on the human revelations. They'd been integrated into the Council 40 years earlier after what had been described as a request for protection from interstellar raiders. The human data revealed that the raids had been conducted by Council species acting under secret orders, creating a crisis that justified intervention. "This changes everything," declared Prime Minister as she reviewed the evidence. "If the humans can prove that the Council has been systematically conquering innocent civilizations, we have grounds for demanding independence under galactic law." Similar reactions were occurring across Council territory, as species discovered that their integration had been based on manufactured crises or outright conquest disguised as peaceful negotiation. The Council's political foundation was cracking under the weight of human revelations. Fleet Admiral watched his mission collapse in real time. What had begun as a simple enforcement operation had become a galactic political revolution that threatened to destroy the Council's authority completely. The humans had turned their defensive position into an offensive campaign that struck at the heart of galactic civilization. "Admiral," his aide reported quietly, "we're receiving withdrawal orders from 6 of our member species. They're pulling their ships from the fleet and returning to home territory. The political situation is deteriorating rapidly." Made the hardest decision of his military career. With his fleet disintegrating and his political support evaporating, continued confrontation would serve no purpose except to hand humanity an even more complete victory. "Signal the human fleet," he ordered. "Request immediate ceasefire negotiations. It appears we need to discuss more than just territorial recognition." Admiral received the ceasefire request with satisfaction, but no surprise. Humanity's victory had been achieved not through superior firepower alone, but through superior preparation and understanding of their enemy's weaknesses. They'd fought the battle on multiple fronts simultaneously, achieving military, political, and legal victories that left the Council with no viable options except negotiation. "Tell Admiral we'll be happy to discuss terms," she replied. "But make it clear that we're negotiating as equals representing a sovereign interstellar civilization. The age of Council domination over newly discovered species has officially ended." The emergency session of the Galactic Council 3 months later bore no resemblance to the confident governing body that had authorized humanity's conquest. Half the member species had withdrawn from Council territory, declaring independence based on evidence of forced integration revealed by human intelligence operations. The remaining members found themselves facing a complete restructuring of galactic politics. Counselor of the ancient Keeper species called the session to order with a heavy heart. The Keepers had founded the Council too earlier as a force for peace and cooperation among spacefaring civilizations. Watching it collapse under the weight of its own contradictions was painful, even if long overdue. "We convene this emergency session to address the human question and the broader political crisis it has created," announced. "The Council must decide whether to continue existing policies or adapt to new galactic realities." The debate that followed was unlike anything in Council history. Instead of unified member species presenting coordinated positions, individual delegates argued for radically different approaches to dealing with humanity and the broader implications of their successful resistance. Ambassador represented humanity at the Council for the first time, her presence itself a symbol of how completely the situation had changed. 3 months earlier, humans were supposedly a primitive species requiring forced integration. Now they sat at the Council table as equals, backed by military strength that had proven itself capable of challenging any power in the galaxy. "Honorable Councilors," she began, "humanity comes before this body not as supplicants seeking admission, but as representatives of a sovereign civilization offering partnership. We've demonstrated our ability to exist independently of Council authority. The question is whether the Council wishes to work with us or continue trying to control us." The response from Counselor of the Hegemony Union was predictably hostile. "The humans have destabilized the entire galactic order. Their interference has caused the withdrawal of 8 member species and inspired rebellion in dozens more. They represent a threat to everything the Council has built." "Actually," Ambassador replied calmly, "we represent a return to what the Council was originally supposed to be. According to your own founding documents, The Council was created to facilitate cooperation between independent civilizations, not to forcibly integrate primitive species into a hierarchical empire. She activated a holographic display showing the original Council charter, documents that most current members had never seen. The contrast between the founders' idealistic vision and the modern Council's imperial reality was stark and undeniable. Counselor of the Meridian Collective attempted to defend current policies. The integration process has brought peace and prosperity to hundreds of species. The Council has prevented countless wars and conflicts through unified governance. Director, attending the session via quantum communication link from Earth, interrupted with data that silenced the chamber. Counselor, according to Council records we've analyzed, your peaceful integrations have resulted in the displacement of 73 million sentient beings, the destruction of 46 independent governments, and the elimination of dozens of unique cultural systems. The peace you mention came at the cost of freedom for entire civilizations. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Humanity's intelligence operations had been more thorough than even the Council's own records. They'd assembled a comprehensive database of Council activities that painted a picture of systematic conquest disguised as benevolent expansion. The political earthquake that followed reshaped galactic civilization permanently. The Republic formally declared independence and signed a mutual defense treaty with humanity within hours of presentation. The Arcturus Confederation followed suit the next day. By the end of the week, 17 former Council members had withdrawn and established the Independent Systems Alliance with humanity as a founding member. Admiral, watching from his flagship, finally understood the scope of humanity's strategy. They hadn't just prepared to defend themselves, they'd prepared to offer leadership to every species that desired freedom from Council control. The military confrontation had been only the opening move in a carefully planned campaign to restructure galactic politics. "Sir," his aide reported, "the Hegemony Union is recalling our fleet to home territory. They're abandoning any attempt to force human integration and focusing on preventing further member withdrawals." The Council's retreat was complete. What had begun as a simple conquest operation had destroyed their empire and established humanity as the leader of a new galactic order. The species that had been dismissed as primitive had outmaneuvered the galaxy's most sophisticated civilizations at every level. President Martinez addressed the Global Defense Council from the rebuilt United Nations headquarters in New York. The chamber now included representatives from 43 human colonies and 18 alien species that had chosen to ally with humanity rather than remain under Council control. "Ladies and honored allies," she began, "3 months ago, the galaxy saw us as a primitive species suitable only for conquest. Today, we lead an alliance of free civilizations that spans dozens of star systems and represents the largest military and economic bloc in known space." The transformation was remarkable by any measure. Humanity had emerged from hiding to become the dominant political force in their region of the galaxy, not through conquest, but through offering an alternative to Council imperialism that appealed to species throughout known space. Dr. Sarah, now Director of Interstellar Relations, provided the statistical analysis that demonstrated the scope of humanity's success. The Independent Systems Alliance now includes 31 star systems with combined populations exceeding 18 billion sentient beings. Our military capabilities match or exceed those of the remaining Council forces, and our economic integration is proceeding ahead of all projections. The economic aspect of humanity's victory was as important as the military one. By offering trade partnerships based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation, the alliance was attracting species that had remained neutral during the initial political upheaval. The Council's monopolistic approach to galactic commerce was being challenged by a more dynamic and equitable system. Captain Santos, now promoted to Admiral and commanding the Alliance's intelligence operations, reported on Council activities. The remaining Council forces are consolidating around their core systems and abandoning expansion operations. Intelligence indicates significant internal debates about whether to attempt reconciliation with the Alliance or prepare for extended conflict. The answer came from an unexpected source. Counselor requested a private meeting with Ambassador, representing the first direct diplomatic contact between the old Council and the new Alliance. The meeting took place aboard a neutral space station in unclaimed territory, with both sides maintaining significant security forces nearby. "Ambassador," the ancient keeper began, "my people founded the council with noble intentions. We sought to create a galaxy where different species could coexist and prosper together. Somewhere along the way, we lost sight of those ideals and allowed the council to become what it was never meant to be." Listened respectfully. The keepers were among the oldest spacefaring species known, and their perspective carried weight that transcended immediate political considerations. "Counselor, humanity has no interest in destroying what's worthwhile about galactic civilization. We simply refuse to accept that civilization must be built on the conquest of innocent species." "What would humanity propose as an alternative?" asked. The question had been anticipated and prepared for. Activated a holographic display showing a proposed new galactic charter that had been developed by Alliance political theorists over the preceding months. "A true federation of independent civilizations. Counselor, species would maintain their sovereignty and cultural independence while cooperating on matters of mutual interest. No forced integrations, no imperial expansion, just voluntary association between equals." The document represented a complete rejection of Council imperial philosophy in favor of a system based on consent and cooperation. It would require the dissolution of the current Council and its replacement with a democratic federation where each member species had equal representation regardless of military or economic power. "The remaining Council species would never accept such terms," observed. "They won't have to," replied. "The Alliance is large enough to function independently. We're offering the opportunity for peaceful coexistence, but we're not dependent on Council acceptance to succeed." That was the crucial difference that made humanity's approach so effective. They'd built their alternative system strong enough to survive and prosper regardless of Council opposition. The offer of cooperation was genuine, but it came from a position of strength rather than weakness. Admiral received the final confirmation she'd been waiting for. Long-range reconnaissance had detected the withdrawal of the last Council enforcement fleets from Alliance territory. The immediate military threat was over, and humanity's sovereignty was secure. "Signal all Alliance commands," she ordered. "Operation Liberation is concluded. We've achieved full recognition of Alliance independence and established humanity as a major galactic power. The masquerade is officially over." Earth's sky was filled with ships from dozens of worlds as representatives arrived for the Alliance's founding ceremony. Species that had never imagined freedom from Council control were joining together to create something entirely new in galactic history. Humanity had used their moment of revelation not just to defend themselves, but to offer hope to every civilization that valued freedom over security. As President Martinez delivered the ceremony's closing address, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. "We began as a species that chose to hide from the galaxy until we were strong enough to stand as equals. Today, we stand not just as equals, but as leaders of a new galactic order based on freedom, cooperation, and respect for the sovereignty of all sentient beings." The invasion of Earth had indeed been a mistake, but not for the reasons Admiral had imagined. It wasn't a mistake because humanity was too strong to conquer, though that had proven true. It was a mistake because it had awakened a sleeping giant that would reshape galactic civilization itself. The galaxy would never be the same, and for the first time that change represented hope rather than conquest for the billions of beings seeking freedom among the stars.